And I feel that as Indian fans, we should definitely be more patient, give our team more time, and not exert as much pressure on them so that they are able to play their natural game on the biggest stages as well. Some of the finest teams that we have seen in the world, but we fail to deliver those final moments that bring us the ICC titles. You have so many players whose individual journeys you can track throughout this IPL and make your own case that this should be the player that makes it into the starting 11 for India. This should be the player that makes it into starting 11 of India. While we've generally seen that throughout the history of ODI cricket, the number of runs being scored every over has been increasing every year. But the spike has just gone crazy right now. And I think that's down to the fact that teams are shifting their approaches. They are looking to play way more aggressive cricket. There's so much potential to invest in the white ball and make it better to the degree that we wouldn't need two new balls anymore. We need two new balls because the current white ball can't survive 50 overs. So I feel that with those changes, you'll see a much more interesting ODI game simply because the disparity between bat and ball would be much lower.
Good day everyone, my name is Navneet Anand from aajKal, local and global. Cricket in the blood of each and every Indian, and especially when it is the youth, whom I predict to be Harsha Bhogle of tomorrow. Yes, Mehul, welcome to the show.
Hi Navneet, great to meet you.
Future of cricket. Test, ODIs, T20. According to you.
I feel the three formats are all presenting ICC with a very different opportunity and with a different challenge. I feel Test cricket has seen a little bit of a renaissance recently with the introduction of the World Test Championship, along with teams just playing more result oriented, fearless cricket. Every session has now become way more interesting than it used to be in the past. And I feel Test cricket is in a really good situation. The T20 is leading the expansion of cricket globally. We are seeing a T20 World Cup in the US, which is a landmark moment for cricket. Cricket is also going to make it to Olympics using the T20 cricket, which is an absolutely great achievement for it. ODIs, however, I feel is where the real challenges for cricket lie. I think the middle overs of the ODI format present ICC with its biggest challenge: how to make the dull periods of cricket more interesting. And I feel the best way to do that is to invest more in looking at the rules of ODI cricket and making it such that with improvements in technology in such as balls, bats, and everything else, we can scrap the rules that are contributing to this negligence. We have things such as the two new balls, which are creating dull moments in the middle of cricket matches.
Absolutely.
And because of that, I feel with better conditioning on the ball, we could get rid of the two new balls rule and bring back the golden times of ODI cricket.
T20 to be included in Olympics in the coming years. How sure are you?
I think there's already been reports of it being reached in the 2028 Olympics.
Mhm.
I'm very optimistic about it. The biggest challenge, of course, is that cricket is not truly a global sport yet. There's only about 10 to 12 nations that are playing it at the very, very highest level. However, I do feel that this current T20 World Cup in 2024 in the United States is a big, big opportunity for cricket. I think if cricket manages to expand its viewership here, then there will be a push to include cricket in the Olympics. And I feel that this is where cricket starts. Even if it's currently played by only 12 to 15 top level nations, inclusion in one Olympics itself is just going to create that snowball effect, and you're going to see more and more teams come in. And because of that, I feel the prospects for cricket are bright.
Going back to Test cricket, what I feel is the people of my generation who have grown up watching Test cricket more than ODI or T20, that is the real test of your patience. That is the real test of your bowling, batting, as well as fielding. What's your take on that?
I think there is no doubt amongst any cricket purist, anyone who follows cricket regularly, that Test cricket is the ultimate challenge for any cricketer. The amount it tests you on a technical level, on a physical level, considering that you have to play across 5 days, and more importantly, on a mental level. As a batsman, you have to stay on the crease, determined to curb your natural instincts at times, play out difficult periods, and wait for the opportunity to come your way. I think that is something that only the finest batsman can master. which is evidenced by the fact that the greatest in Test cricket are also considered the greatest in the sport. And even as a bowler, you have to constantly chip away at the batsman, you have to wait for the opportunity to come. And I feel that that is something that requires a completely different level of play. And
It
I
is the skills, the patience. It's a combination of everything.
Yes, I completely agree with you on that matter. And I feel that is what is keeping Test cricket alive. I think the fact that the purists appreciate its quality is why it will forever be cemented as the greatest format of the game.
India's ICC performance. The different title winning in 1983, 2007, and then 11. What basic difference do you see in these three teams?
I think over the last 12 to 13 years, it's been a bit of a struggle for Indian fans. We've constantly had some of the finest teams that we have seen in the world, but we fail to deliver those final moments that bring us the ICC titles. And I think there's two things that every Indian fan should know. One is that it's extraordinarily hard to win an international tournament. There's a lot of variance involved. Knockout games are not always the perfect description of who was the better team, but rather who handled certain moments better. And I feel that as Indian fans, we should definitely be more patient, give our team more time, and not exert as much pressure on them so that they are able to play their natural game on the biggest stages as well. On the other hand, I also feel that to some degree, what we have seen recently from India is that in crunch matches such as semi-finals and finals, we've tended to go into our shell. We have not played our natural game. We've played a bit more conservative. I think the recent ODI World Cup final was the best example. In the middle overs, India had been one of the most attacking teams throughout the tournament. But Kohli and Rahul, they just went into their shell at a point of time, and they felt that it was very important for them to play conservative and play out the hard period, and that allowed Australia to exert their dominance and get on top. Similarly, when Australia were batting, I felt that there were certain defensive bowling changes that were made, and Siraj was held back, fields were a little bit more defensive. There wasn't as much pressure in restricting the flow of runs in terms of strike rotation. And I feel that with those changes, if India backs itself to play at its top level with a natural game, with the best executed plans that we all know that they have, I feel that the title is coming very soon for India.
Well, normally I say it is the game on the day. India having won 10 out of first 10 matches. The last one, the finals that we're talking of, where we say Australia coming up aggressively, playing brilliantly. Australia coming, losing the first two matches and then coming back in the game, reaching to the finals in front of 130,000 Indian fans and then winning the game was extraordinary.
I completely agree with you on that. I think there was a great notion before the final that it would take an extraordinary heist from Australia to beat India. The general perception was that Australia, even though they are 5-time winning champions before that, they were considered the underdogs. And that's a testament to how well India were playing. But I think Australia fed on that. I think they were somewhat furious that they were being considered underdogs, and they wanted to come out and show everyone that they are never underdogs. They are the ones who should be considered the favorites. They came out with well executed plans. They came out with an extremely aggressive approach. And I think to that extent, they somewhat caught India by surprise because India hadn't really been challenged to that degree before in the tournament. India had been cruising through, they had won matches by 200, 300, 400 runs. And because of that, I felt that India didn't exactly know how to respond to that. And when the time for the true legends to shine and show their performance came up, I felt that India just went a little bit defensive and that cost them the title.
Well, we had that ICC acclaimed umpire, Mr. Simon Toffel, in the World Cup Gupshup, a series that we did recently. What he was saying is, with every win, India is getting closer to losing a match. And this is what exactly happened. Winning, 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 that means he was probably overconfident at one stage, or at the second place, they did not accept Australia to be playing that well in front of the Indian audience. Or thirdly, it could be other way around. The pressure on India was enormous. That in front of so much of audience, another 30,000 audience that suck the energy out of you as well. But cricket is a game of surprises. It is the game on the day. It's not over till the match is over. Talking about India's future, what are the tailwinds for India in the coming future?
I think the future of Indian cricket looks very, very bright over the next 10-15 years. And I think there's two big driving reasons for that. One is that there's a very exciting crop of youngsters coming up. And these youngsters, they're playing extremely fearless cricket. I've watched series recently where India's picked 15 brand new players who've never played international cricket before, who've come out and dominated international quality teams. And they've done that because they always back themselves to play their natural game. And I think the fact that they're getting exposure with top level coaches, they're playing the IPL where they're put into very, very high pressure situations and the onus is on them to perform. You have guys like Ruturaj Gaikwad who are already the key men for their IPL franchises. And because of that, I feel that this crop is something different. I feel that this is going to lead India to a number of ICC titles. The future is very, very bright. The other thing is, we're seeing the rise of certain profiles in Indian cricket that were so rare before. We have express fast bowlers coming up who are of world class quality, which is something that I don't think I've ever seen before in Indian cricket. Apart from that, you have aggressive top order batsmen, you have sturdy middle order batsmen who are capable of rotating the strike as well as hitting the big shots. You have people who are very clear with their approach and who know exactly what the team management is asking you to do. And a combination of all those things is what makes the teams really, really special. I feel if I look back at the dominant Australian side between the late 1990s and the early 2000s, that was the backbone of their success. They had a combination of very unique profiles and a management that propelled them to execute their plans at the highest level. And I feel that that perfect storm is coming to India as well. And over the next 10-15 years, you could see something very special brewing in Indian cricket.
Looking forward to it. The power creep in cricket. According to you, what do you think? Does it threaten the future interest in cricket as only the few nations seems to be surpassing the others in the team performance as well?
Look, I'm not gonna lie. I really think that this is a real problem in
It
cricket
is.
right now. I think the fact that India, New Zealand, Australia, and England are so far ahead of the remaining pack. I mean, when the World Test Championship draw was being made, there were people talking about let's see who makes the final out of India, Australia, and New Zealand because that's how concentrated the power and money has become in this sport. However, I do think that it has somewhat to do with the fact that at some level the distribution of revenue is not very equitable. I think while market forces should to some extent drive revenue across nations to incentivize people to invest more, there should be some degree of balance that is also created in terms of revenue sharing. I feel that India, England, and Australia they do prefer at times to play matches amongst each other. If I look at the World Test Championship table, then India, Australia, and England have together played 31 Test matches in this cycle, while all the other remaining teams combined have played 27. And that to me points to a degree of somewhat lack of initiative by remaining boards, and at the same time, some scheduling problems that have emerged from the top three nations with regards to not exactly wanting to play with these nations a lot. I feel that with more matches for these teams, they'll be on a more equal footing. And at the same time, when cricket expands more, when it goes to more richer economies, such as the US, for example, we will see the rise of more nations that challenge this dominance. And I really hope that over time we see a more level playing field for cricket.
Baseball. Dissecting the new storm in cricket. Your views on that?
I feel baseball as a philosophy is something that has the potential to change cricket. I think on a cricketing level, the concept of it is fantastic. We've already seen it executed very well once when New Zealand reached the finals of the 2015 ICC World Cup and arguably should have won it as well, but just came up short in the end. And I think that currently the way it's being implemented in England, what I've generally observed is that it's a country that takes a lot of pride in its sports. And for that reason, when baseball succeeded initially, there was a degree of euphoria that was being created. And that euphoria is somewhat transformed into arrogance at this point. When we saw Ben Stokes take out Rohit Sharma with one of the first few balls of his spell, all the headlines in England were talking about that. But nobody was talking about the fact that England were 250 runs behind and they needed a miracle to win the match. So I feel that the off the field stuff where they're constantly talking about themselves being the ambassadors for cricket, about being the ones who have changed cricket, should probably be limited a bit more, because I feel that's distracting the players away from really introspecting and looking at their mistakes throughout the game and working on those and improving them. I feel that everything that goes right is credited to baseball, and everything that goes wrong is just credited as players not feeling to play baseball, which is, in my view, a bit lopsided. And I feel that if England really work on that, then they have a great cricketing philosophy on their hands.
Taking you back to India, IPL in 2024. What's going to be different in this year? Why India should be looking more closely in these games?
I think the 2024 T20 World Cup is going to go down as one of the most historic moments in Indian cricket, simply because this is the culmination of a 2, 3, 4 year plan where India has said we are not going to pick players based on past performances anymore. We are going to look at current form, we're going to look at youngsters, we're going to look at people who have performed in the domestic circuit, and based on that, pick a T20 team that's built to play T20 cricket. And because of that, as of today, we only have 5 guaranteed starters in our starting 11, even though the T20 World Cup is immediately after the IPL. There's 6 spots that are being fought for by 20 plus players. And these include some very, very big names. They include Virat Kohli, Ravindra Jadeja, you have players like Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. These are all players who are on the fringes of the Indian T20 team right now. And because of that, I feel that this edition, it promises a lot. You have so many players whose individual journeys you can track throughout this IPL and make your own case that this should be the player that makes it into the starting 11 for India. This should be the player that makes it into starting 11 of India. And once you do that, this IPL takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just about franchise cricket anymore. It's about franchise cricket feeding into the Indian team. And I feel that's what is really going to drive the connection in this year's IPL as a viewer.
Uh, I call it the other way around. This is probably one of the games where the selectors would be keeping an eye on players, and players have to sell themselves to be part of the Indian squad. That is going to be an honor for each and every cricketer to play for their nation, does not matter what country they come from.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel that it's not just the case with India. I think it's the case with a lot more other teams as well, where you probably don't know what their first 11 is going to look like. And there's going to be plenty of chopping and changing that's going to happen based on IPL performances. And the fact that it's not just limited to India is probably what makes the IPL even more interesting than it should.
Changing trends in cricket. According to a youth like you who breathes cricket, who dreams cricket, who talks cricket, and who probably lives cricket throughout the life, why is it difficult to bat in the test when we compare it with the ODI?
So, a bit of data before this. I think what you'll observe across the last few years is that test match batting averages are almost at an all-time low, while ODI batting averages are soaring. ODI batting averages are soaring, ODI strike rates are soaring. And this is down to a combination of factors. One is that in test matches, there's a shift towards playing result-oriented cricket. Nobody wants a draw anymore. They're taking more risks. They're making pitches that are better suited to bowlers so that you're constantly seeing 40 wickets throughout the match. And that, with the introduction of analytics, with the introduction of technology, the fact that bowlers are now able to analyze batting techniques, look out for chinks, it has benefited fast bowling like nothing else. And because of that, over the last 3 years, batting averages against pace have been exceptionally low. And overall batting averages are so low that I would say that batting in test matches is harder than ever before. You have greats like Steve Smith and Virat Kohli who are having some of the worst years of their cricketing career, simply because it's become so hard to bat in test matches. In ODIs, however, I feel the opposite trend is happening. While we've generally seen that throughout the history of ODI cricket, the number of runs being scored every over has been increasing every year. But the spike has just gone crazy right now. And I think that's down to the fact that teams are shifting their approaches. They are looking to play way more aggressive cricket. And at the same time, I think the condition of the balls has just been deteriorating day by day. There has been zero investment in balls, while there's been a ton of investment in bats. And because of that, the disparity between bat and ball is just increasing. I think the white ball as an object is one of the least cared about things in cricket. I think while there's so much potential to invest in the white ball and make it better, to the degree that we wouldn't need two new balls anymore. We need two new balls because the current white ball can't survive 50 overs. So I feel that with those changes, you'll see a much more interesting ODI game simply because the disparity between bat and ball will be much lower.
The WTC table. What are the permutations for the key contenders?
I think currently the WTC table is in a very interesting state. I think after the 2-0 win that Australia registered over New Zealand, the tables become a bit more tight. I think the India series in Australia is going to be very decisive for the table. And if that series ends on an equal footing, say about 2-2 or 3-2 to India, then I would say the table becomes even more interesting, because then Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, they'll all be fighting for the 4 top spots. And all of them have really good fixtures coming up. They have some tough fixtures, they're playing each other a lot more. And because of that, I think the variance is a lot more. But currently, I feel that India and Australia are the favorites. And I wanted to stress on this because we're not going to see Test cricket for another 6 months. And I really hope that when we come back from the T20 circuit, people really stay invested in Test cricket, because this is going to be a fascinating battle for the World T20 final.
Umpire's call. Why is it here? And do you think this needs to be scrapped?
I think there's been a lot of recent controversy around the umpire's call. Now, I think the key thing with umpire's call is that people need to understand it's not there to benefit the umpire on field, but it's actually there to account for the margin of error in technology. So currently, Hawkeye, like any other technology, it's not 100% accurate. It has about a 10 to 15% variation with regards to accuracy in predicting the ball. Because of that, a lot of times you'll see that LBWs that look plumb on first sight, Hawkeye shows them to be missing the stumps, simply because there is some degree of error in technology. And if you scrap the umpire's call, that 10 to 15% of the time where the ball is actually missing, it's going to be hitting the stumps based on Hawkeye. So with that, your stumps naturally become 10 to 15% larger. And your LBW calls are just going to shoot up even more. That's going to lead to even more controversy. So currently the umpire's call is absolutely necessary in cricket. I think there needs to be a bit more study perhaps to look into whether the margin of error that is attributed to umpire's call, currently I think it's around 50%, should that bound be reviewed? Maybe we can reduce it to 30%. Maybe that is a more fair estimate of the margin of error of technology. But as a concept, I think until we get 100% accurate technology, which is not going to be anytime soon, umpire's call needs to be here. Otherwise, it's going to become way more disadvantageous to bat.
Technologies are there to support, to making the decision much easier. But I tell you one thing, trust me, human minds are the best. They can beat any of the technology at any point of time. Every cricketer, first they have the dream to be part of the nation's squad, then they have the dream of becoming a captain of the team. But these days, captaincy is becoming harder and harder every day. Why so?
I genuinely believe that captaincy today is harder than ever before. And I think there's two particular reasons. One is that with the advancement in analytics, with the advancement in things such as social media, everyone has a view. And because of that, that individual flair that used to exist in captaincies is scoffed at a lot more. I think a lot of times, I heard Kapil Dev saying this once on commentary, that a captain makes an unorthodox decision. If it pans out, it's considered a masterstroke. something that nobody thought of. But if it doesn't pan out, it's disregarded as a silly decision and something that is totally on the captain, something that might be match losing. But as a captain, you have to take those risks. There's no other way of outplaying the opposition when the going gets tough. And I think that's something that needs to be understood a lot more in the general public. I think currently, when captains make decisions that are against what you would consider traditional, they receive a lot more flack than they should. I mean, at the end of the day, MS Dhoni gave the final over of the 2007 T20 World Cup to Joginder Sharma. If Misbah-ul Haq had hit two sixes in the first two balls, everyone would say that it was the worst decision of Dhoni's captaincy career. But because Joginder performed in that over, we consider it a masterstroke. And I feel that that's how we should look at every captaincy decision. We should look at it as a calculated risk. We should try to understand the captain's reasoning behind it. And only when we feel that there's not sufficient reasoning behind it is when we should actually go ahead and criticize it.
You know, I would still emphasize that every decision that a captain makes, because it is the time when he is thinking of the game, probably a way ahead than a spectator like me and you would be thinking of. The amount of pressure that he has, and as you said, to outperform the opposite team. It is a decision has to be made then and there. Sometimes it goes in favor, sometimes it goes against it. But this is what proves that cricket is a game of surprises. It is the game on the day. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, before I wrap up, I welcome Mehul Singla to be on the panel of Voice aajKal for a longer period than I could think of. Thank you so much, Vinay Arora, for introducing me to such a wonderful chap. Mehul, thank you so much and welcome to the Voice aajKal.
Thank you, Navneet.
This is Navneet Anand signing out for Voice aajKal, local and global.
VT Times. Be with the times.